Thank you. How's it going? Get my clicker out. So, do we have the... Oh, we're there. Okay, good. So, hey everyone, I'm Trevor. I am a fan of this event. We've been coming here for some time now, and really want to thank the organizers and everyone here for popping in. And yeah, that's me. So my background is heavy into the Web3 space. I'm from Toronto. That's where a lot of early innovation happened in Web3. That's where Ethereum was from. That's where Vitalik and a lot of those guys are from. So that's kind of my history, was kind of being in the early Bitcoin movement. That was kind of 2012 to 2014. And that was kind of all we did. And we were involved in some of the first altcoins that ever existed on top of Bitcoin. And we were just kind of playing around. It wasn't like a serious industry back then. But as time went on and Ethereum started launching, and there's a new thing in the blockchain you can do. You can do expressive programmatic computation inside of a virtual machine, and that was Ethereum, and got everybody excited. So I was very active in the Ethereum community. And then in 2017, I started my own project called Polymath, which was an early tokenization platform that kind of allowed anyone to tokenize anything, because Vitalik and everyone was like, hey, let's tokenize protocols. And we kind of saw a future where not just protocols are tokenized, but like cash, art, and then eventually securities and commodities and everything else. So that was my background. We ended up launching a layer 1 blockchain a year or two ago with Charles Hoskinson. We actually announced it at Consensus in 2019, I think. So that's kind of been my main focus for the last, 3/4 of a decade, was as a founder in the Web3 space. But I met a guy in Toronto, where I'm from. Not only has Toronto got really good Web3 roots and heritage with Ethereum being from there, but it's also got really good AI roots. Because a lot of the forefathers of AI are actually Toronto professors at the University of Toronto. So it's not surprising when you go to an event sometimes, you can meet the Venn diagram of someone who's like a master's machine learning student and also has a crypto startup. So about 18 months ago, I was at a Starkware event in Toronto, and I met a guy named Bowen. He's here somewhere. And he was one of those guys. He was like a machine learning master's grad and also a venture-backed crypto founder. And I was kind of like, hey, like, what are you working on? And he's like, well, I'm kind of a machine learning AI guy. And I'm like, oh, tell me more. And it wasn't quite in the hype cycle yet. It was just more of like a technical curiosity I had 1.5 or 2 years ago. And he actually kind of tutored me. I'd bring him over and he would kind of teach me the basics of AI, so I didn't sound like an idiot when it came up in conversations in Silicon Valley. And the one thing that I kind of zeroed in on when he was teaching me this was the data side of AI. Because there's kind of two things that make up AI. There's data and there's compute. And what you mostly hear about in the news is the compute, the data centers, the chips, Sam Altman, $7 trillion fundraise request. Everyone's kind of talking about the compute part. But I think the more interesting area right now is the data side. So kind of how does AI model production work? And the way I learned from my friend was it's kind of like a supply chain. So the way to think about AI data is like, I don't know, an oil supply chain where it starts out as raw crude oil, and then you can't just put that in your car. You have to like refine it, you have to process it, and it kind of moves up the supply chain and it becomes more valuable the further up the chain you go. And AI data is actually very similar. It starts out as a raw material. You could think of this like scrape data from the internet or web crawling data from the internet. It's data, but it's kind of like messy, it's kind of raw. And you need another step, which is to refine that data. And that has a few different names. You can call it classification, you can call it annotation. The industry term is kind of data labeling. And what that does is it kind of preps this raw data, like the crude oil, and it makes it kind of nice, like turns it into gasoline. Another way to think of it, this is a founder, I think he's from Toronto too. And And he explained it in a way I thought was really helpful from the beginning, which was a furnace. So you can think of AI data like a furnace. It starts out as like iron ore that you put in the furnace, and then the structuring step is like blasting the furnace and making it useful and like turning it into a sword or something. So that's another way to think about it, is kind of like something you go in the furnace, and then the structuring part is considered how you like blast that data and turn it into something useful. Now, why is this important? Well, let's go to OpenAI for a second. OpenAI actually was not the first LLM. They were the third, because Google and Facebook both had models before OpenAI, but they just didn't really work. So they didn't release them. And AI was kind of in the background, like in the box for years, almost decades, because everyone was afraid to release it because they were afraid of how it would perform. You hear that a lot now, the performance of models. And so OpenAI comes along and they start experimenting with different techniques to make it work. And the one thing that they stumbled upon and they really pioneered was this concept of RLHF, which is an academic term meaning reinforcement learning with human feedback. And that's just a really fancy way of saying they took these data sets and they used humans to be the furnace. They used the humans to label data at an industrial scale. We're talking millions of humans, mostly in Southeast Asia, that would label and structure this data. And then suddenly OpenAI, DALL-E and ChatGPT-1 changed. It was like the step change that was needed. And as soon as that happened, it's like, this works, we get it. And so one of the implications of that is that behind the curtains of these big models that are worth $100 billion are just a lot of humans labeling data. And the industry sort of doesn't want you to know that, kind of. It's a whole other thing I'll get into. But to this day, it's one of the fastest growing subsets of AI is data and data structuring. And so why humans? Well, humans just make models perform better because it's giving you feedback about a question of a data set. So is this a cat or a dog? This is the very rudimentary question where you're trying to train an AI model to replace humans. So instead of having a human saying this is a cat and dog, you just get a lot of humans to label cat, label dog, and then eventually the model figures out on its own without needing humans. And so that's a rudimentary example, but you can imagine this being expanding to medical, where you have models that predict cancer by looking at radiology reports of like a tumor. And now you have a radiologist label the data, this is a cancer cell, this is a tumor, this is nothing, and then over time you're training the model to predict cancer. And then you could just literally extrapolate that to any industry and law, and that's the stage of AI we're in right now, is teaching the AI through structured data how to be accurate and how to look and think and feel like a human. I'll go through some quotes, so just bear with me, but I think they're important. You know, you look at Sam Altman, RLHF, that's what I just talked about, is what we do. It's how we align human incentives with AI. Elon Musk, he just raised, I think, 24 billion market cap for his new model. He knows how important AI data is. He says, to make it safe, that's his big thing. You need humans because humans are the end user, and you want to make sure we're serving humans, not machines at the end of the day. Sundar from Google, the feedback and input from humans in the form of labeled data, what we just talked about, is what makes AI systems robust. These are like the top of the food chain people harping on this. You don't hear about it in the news because everyone wants to talk about the compute. It's more sexy, but this is really the unsexy, like raw materials going into the furnace. A couple more here. I'll point you to the bottom left is a company called Scale AI, an amazing company. They kind of pioneered industrial scale RLHF. They just raised at a 13 billion valuation, and great founder, great team, and they've really like won huge contracts because if like the Pentagon or someone needs to build an AI model, they need a lot of really good, reliable human feedback to help label the data and pre-train the model in advance. So it's a really hot space right now. I really like this quote from Mike Maples. He's a venture capitalist. Folks used to say the closest person to the compiler is in charge. Now it's the closest person to the data. And Harj Tagger here, another investor, he who labels the data controls the narrative. That's another, I think, a good way to encapsulate the importance of this part of the AI kind of paradigm. So what is data labeling? This is what it looks like. It's a lot of this. It's a lot of bounding boxes. These are called modalities. So you have text modalities, you have video modalities, you have audio modalities, you have LiDAR as a modality. That's like for self-driving cars. That was actually the first major industrial use case of data labeling, was labeling stop signs and teaching the neural net how to predict what's a human and what's not, and how to make a self-driving car actually work. So you can see some examples here. This is a real form of employment for people, not in North America really, in Asia. They do stuff like this. They draw bounding boxes around images, they listen to audio files and they tag them, and they read text-based files as well. You can see some examples here. This is data labeling. But back to OpenAI, the secret is kind of out of the bag now, because they crushed everyone in their early models, ChatGPT-1, and everyone realized the reason they crushed it is because they have a lot more human budget to make these models perform better. And so, for an example, OpenAI reportedly was spending $100 million on human feedback last year, in 2023 fiscal year. This year's budget is reportedly 10x that. So $1 billion just to pay humans to label data. And it's kind of like the Moore's Law on steroids right now, because there's an arms race. Everybody is fighting Gemini versus Mistral versus OpenAI versus Claude. They're all fighting for performance. They all get benchmarked. And the best way to get performance is to put more and more human feedback loops on the data. So that's kind of what's going on right now. And this is just the big high end of the market. We're also seeing the long tail emerge right now. So we're seeing like smaller models. So maybe not like the big tech models, but maybe like an enterprise model. So that usually wouldn't be considered long tail, because Walmart is a big company. It's one of the biggest companies in the world. But compared to OpenAI's budget, they'd be the long tail. So the S&P 500, they're all going to be building their own models. They're all going to want their models to be private and permissioned for the most part. They don't like having their customer data uploaded to OpenAI servers. And so they're all going to have to build their own models. And what do we know from my first experiment? Their models are not going to work. They're going to suck probably. We're not there. They haven't even done them yet, but we're pretty sure they're going to suck for the same reason Google's and Facebook's initial models suck, because they don't know how to, like, at scale, point a lot of humans onto these data sets, if that makes sense. So yeah, enterprise is a great use case, long tail. Open source is a big one. You're seeing open source models. They're going to need human feedback in their data sets. We're going to see researchers. Those are even smaller models. If you want to fine tune a little tiny model, you also need humans to help fine tune it as well. So yeah, this is outdated a bit. I think it's already a $5 billion market, so it's growing like crazy. Like I said, this is one of, if not the fastest growing subsegments of AI. AI is kind of like crypto. Like early in crypto, you could just say, I'm in crypto and do one thing. But now it's like, it's siloed and segregated. You have to say, oh, I'm in NFTs, I'm in Web3 games, I'm in stable coins. It's the same with AI now. It's becoming so big, the market is segmenting. So AI data, in our view, is kind of the most exciting, fastest growing, and most kind of like blue ocean in terms of opportunities for innovation is on AI data. But AI data, I use the analogy, it's kind of like Web 2 in that it's old school. But that's giving it too much credit. I think it's more like Web 1. A lot of the way RLHF happens today is in literal call centers in the Philippines. And so that's not even Web 2, that's like Web 1. So it's kind of hard for both sides of the marketplace here. It's hard for the enterprise because they have to implement a lot of humans, it's messy, it's expensive, and it's preventing a lot of competitors to the big tech models because they can't do it. They don't have the infrastructure to do it. So for the enterprise, it's a big issue, and we should care about that because right now, big tech has a monopoly on good data. on good training data because they can afford humans on their data sets. And so it's in all of our best interest to diversify it and allow other models to compete in terms of performance, I think. But I really want to focus on the other side of the coin, which is the labeler, because we think no one cares about them, and they should, because behind the scenes, these millions of people from the Philippines and Kenya and Egypt that currently do data labeling, no one really cares about them. You know, I'm not saying they're getting exploited or anything, but like no one's building a platform for them. And I feel like they're kind of the heroes. They're the ones that made ChatGPT-1 work, and they don't really get a lot of the credit. And they kind of work, you know, it's low pay. They have to drive to a physical office. I'll give you another actual example. Someone we were talking to in the Philippines, who I would consider her, Maria, an unsung hero of AI, you know, but you see how it is, right? You can imagine the remittance challenges, the payments problems. They have to do these 3-week boot camps before they start getting paid. And sometimes when you do get paid, you get retroactive pay deductions based on how accurately you labeled the data. So that's actually a big problem, is how do you ensure quality in a distributed model? So no one does a distributed model, everyone's centralized. They just have like these big hierarchical kind of drill sergeant operations in these call centers, and it seems a little old school. So that's kind of on the supply side, on the labeler side, that's how we kind of view the market. This is, you know, I think there's articles coming out now saying, hey, you know, what about the labelers? What about the taggers? What about the taskers? And that's kind of what an example of the way they work right now. And it feels just a little bit old school to me. And so we're kind of saying, you know, AI data is getting more and more important. It's kind of done in an antiquated kind of Web 1 way. Like from first principles, what would a new platform look like without like any of the technical debt from the current offerings? And so we kind of like said, hey, let's build something for them. Let's build something for the human labeler. Let's empower them to make more money, to have more flexibility, and to have fun while data labeling. And that's what Sapien is. Our mission is to 100x the amount of human data labelers, because that's the gap in the market today. There is not enough humans labeling data. Think of it like Uber. There was never a problem with passengers. There's an unlimited demand of people that need rides. Get the drivers, that's the hard part. So Travis Kalanick and all those guys, you didn't hear them talk about passengers. It was all about how do we acquire drivers? How do we get supply on the network? And what did he do? He 100x the amount of taxi drivers in the world, and that unlocked a whole new layer of demand. So that's kind of the inspiration for us, is kind of creating a marketplace like Uber, but for data labeling. Just real quick, the demand side is kind of like organizations who need human feedback in their data. So LLMs, enterprises, open source models. And then on the supply side, these are like the drivers for us. It's just anyone who has a cell phone and an internet connection can label data and make a living wage for the first time ever. You know, if you don't have a car, you can't drive an Uber. If you broke your leg, you can't do a DoorDash. But on Sapien, you just like log in on your phone and you can start earning while labeling anytime, anywhere. You don't need a boss. You don't need to drive to a facility. Got a little demo. So I'll walk you through it if everyone can see it. This is the first part. This is the enterprise-facing part. So right now, if you want to get labeled data, you have to like call up one of the big scale AIs of the world or someone else, and you have to like get your biz dev team and your lawyers and stuff. We're trying to make it more self-serve. So it's just like upload your raw data that you need labeled, get an automated quote, kind of like Uber, so you don't have to negotiate anything, there's no contracts, and you're done. And then, if you could pause for 1 second here. Anyway, so this is the game. We're creating a frame where anyone can label data. This is a real customer that we had, a wildlife reservation that's building a model to detect wildlife on their property. So a nice, fun, low-level model. And we're trying to gamify it. We're trying to make it fun. We're trying to add points and rewards and add Web3 components too. So you can win airdrops. You can stake some token to get more rewards. And that also helps with accuracy because you could get slashed if you don't perform well. So we're experimenting with a lot of different ways to ensure quality in a distributed model. So this is what you can think of when you think of the Sapien project, is just a fun gamified way to do data labeling. So it's kind of a mix between AI and Web3 gaming and Web3 incentives, and we're kind of putting it all together for a nice consumer, although this is technically B2B because people that that are using this are working a full-time job. And yeah, so we have different skins as well, so you can start playing the video again. We have different skins, so we have like a casino-style skin, we have a StarCraft type skin, and this, I wanted people, even though it gets kind of a mixed review these days, kind of like Axie Infinity, because it's kind of like play to earn, except there's a real underlying business model, so we would argue it's a little more sustainable, but we believe in that, where like people can do something that's sort of fun, sort of work, get paid to do it, but challenge their friends, have leaderboards, do label-a-thons instead of hackathons. So that's, we're going to do another quick demo at the end, but this is a live product now. We have 7 paying enterprise customers. And yeah, we're really excited to open up the architecture of the game so anyone can integrate with it and anyone can use it. Did that kind of make sense? So that just the frame with the labeling, we're going to embed that game everywhere, so you can log in from like a YGG homepage, from an Animoca homepage, and now these guild members can now make money in a new way, and that little frame is what we want to be embedded everywhere. So I'll get back to that in a minute. So if we go back to Maria, our friend, now she can work from home. Now she can earn more, because guess what? We don't have all the overhead that our competitors have, because we don't have physical facilities and we don't have electricity bills and we don't have company laptops to give out. And those savings we can actually give right back to the data labeler. A lot of labelers make about $1 to $2 per hour, US dollars. We think we can triple that, just base layer, just based on the unit economics of doing this peer-to-peer and doing it remote. We think it's more fun. It's actually very gamified. We try to make it feel like a Web3 game, so working is fun. And then my final, and you can work whenever you want. You can work for 5 minutes at a bus stop instead of playing Candy Crush, or you can work for 5 hours as a full-time job. The last analogy I like to use is we view our labelers as kind of like piranhas, whereas our competitors are like the Navy SEALs. They have like a drill sergeant, they have a big bureaucratic office somewhere, and they all work together. We're more distributed, so you can think of us like some fish or piranhas swimming around. They take a bite out of the data set, and then they swim away. And the fish don't know each other. The data set doesn't know the fish, so it's very pseudonymous in that sense. But we think it's actually better for the customer because you get more diverse labelers. You don't have 26,000 men in the Philippines doing it, which is what you get today. That gets biased and slanted results from your AI output. You want diversity. You want the labelers to reflect everyone. So we think this piranha model, which is more distributed, it's harder to ensure quality, so there is a trade-off, but that's kind of our decentralizing data labeling. That's kind of what we're trying to do. So it's real simple, play game. We're trying to replace these low-paying label farms with a Web3 game. So play game, earn points, redeem for cash or crypto. We think with other rewards we're planning, they can make $3 to $6 as a base per hour and up to $10 an hour with other incentives and rewards. And then when you start getting into specialized data labeling, this is just for anyone who speaks English, or not even speaks English. You can just do anyone in the world, as long as you're a human, you can label data, because you know the difference between a car and a baby. But the next level up, maybe you need to speak English, okay? So that's a little bit higher paid. And the next level up is you need to have a medical degree to be a radiologist, and maybe you're making hundreds of dollars per hour, not $10 an hour. We want to have an open marketplace in that sense. And yeah, for the organizations, very simple, like we said, upload the raw data, get an automated quote, and you're done. You pay in advance, the cash goes on the platform, and then we try to bring that on chain and pay it out in a seamless way. The business model is very marketplace driven. So instead of charging a upfront agency fee or something, we're just saying, hey, if you're an Uber passenger and you have a $200 ride, like I did this morning when my flight didn't get in from Houston to here, Uber takes 20%. It's easy. And then the 80% goes to the labelers. The problem today is the model's flip. The agencies take 80% and the labelers get 20%. And we think that's a little unfair. We want it to be more like the traditional gig marketplace where the marketplace takes like a 20 or 30% fee, and then the rest goes back to the people actually doing the work. So that's how we kind of do the unit economics. We have another model we're going after right now too, where we can label data preemptively so that not a customer technically has hired us to. We just know that it might be mapping data, it might be all kinds of different data, and we can label that in advance and then sell it at the end of it. So the reason we did this is we wanted to make sure our labelers always have something to do. We don't want them to run out of data to label. So now we'll just put them up with new synthetic data that they can label in an unlimited way, and that we know there's market demand for this data because everybody's trying to get more and more training data so their models perform better. And we're trying to also, make it so the customer can do granular things, so they can say, hey, I want everyone but Americans to label my data set. Or I only want Americans to do my data set because this is like a sensitive project. Or I want the most diverse use of people possible, so we can give them features like that as well. I use this trilemma, like the Ethereum scaling trilemma. We have our own trilemma in data labeling. So we're trying to make the labelers pay them more. At the same time, the customer pays less. And you can think of Uber, actually, that's what they did. It's cheaper for the passenger and the driver makes more because it's more efficient, so we want to do that. But the third one is the hard one, the accuracy. So how do we do all three? It's easy to do two of the three, but we want to do all three. So this is kind of our trilemma. And it's actually these Web3 incentives like staking and slashing that we think is the key to not only meeting the top decile benchmarks of accuracy in the industry, but exceeding them in a distributed model. So we're hoping to have our cake and eat it too here. I want to talk quickly, at Polymath, we created a standard, and it's still the default standard for tokenized assets on Ethereum. It's called ERC 1400. And a guy named Fabian Vogelsteller helped put it together. He's the guy who created ERC 20. That's obviously the backbone of Ethereum standards. And so we want to do the same thing for data labeling, because right now, there's no interoperability behind these companies with data sets. There's different formats, there's different tech stacks, and so nothing talks to each other. So if we have this front-end infrastructure, the game that I showed you guys, and I'll show you another demo, only our data can hook into it, because we have our own formats. So what we want to do as kind of a public good for the Web3 AI community is create a new standard. We call it AI 20, we're working on it now, and we just want to make it so any data pipeline can hook into our front end or anyone else's front end. And we can kind of have like a composable Lego block ecosystem that doesn't have these like silos and where this private startup that's raising venture money will never share data with anyone else. We're trying to be like true to our Web3 permissionless roots by creating an AI data standard. So I wanted to share that. The Axie infinity problem is imagine playing Axie and you run out of data. That would suck, because the game turns off. So we need to constantly have new data that our labelers can label. If we have millions of data labelers on the network by the end of the year, we need a lot of data for them to label. So one way to do this is to create our own standard so they can label other people's data, not just our own. And so now we're kind of like a labeling as a service layer on top of the stack. Web3 opportunities. So a lot of people, you see quotes in the AI data space that there's going to be more human data labelers than any other industry combined. I think Sundar from Google predicts there's going to be 1 billion human data labelers. Some of them will know they're labeling data, some of them won't. But this is kind of becoming, all the jobs that are being killed by AI, well, we're creating new ones because we need a lot of human data labelers to make these models work. So that's our big kind of hairy goal, is like to be bigger than any other gig marketplace, because the AI economy is just an unstoppable freight train, and there's an insatiable demand for humans in this model. A couple other things with Web3. that I'm really excited about is staking. So we're having folks put skin in the game while they play. So if you start slacking off, in crypto we call that Sybil attacking. If you try to like cheat, there's kind of like a risk reward for that. So you can get more points if you stake, and you can get slashed if you misbehave. And we have algorithms that can detect pretty accurately whether you're cheating or not. We're trying to create a new model too. So instead of play to earn, it's like train to earn or label to earn. So it's kind of like a new riff on what Axie did with play to earn, but a little more sustainable. We want to do micropayments too as well. That's another reason we want to be on chain. It's a big problem. We went to the guy who built all these data centers for the big data labeling unicorns in Silicon Valley. And one of the biggest problems, payments. If you're in the Philippines and you want to send money back to India and you get paid, good luck. You have to do all these wire payments and remittances. And so we're encouraging everyone to integrate their wallets and to do everything on chain to make things a lot more seamless and interesting. And lastly, we want to really lean into our community of our investors and our advisors to like let their community have a new way to engage in the AI Web3 economy and also make money and earn points at the same time. Just threw this one in. Web3 games are coming back. Our investors don't think we're a Web3 game, but I don't know. I think we might be. So it's good to see this, and I think this is going to be a big year for this this category. Hopefully, we can like help make that hockey stick even more look like a hockey stick. Okay, so this is our new demo. I wanted to show you guys super quick. I got another like 5 minutes before we'll do Q&A. So this is our StarCraft theme, and we can enable Web3 mode. So I want to show you guys this. I want you to imagine this as like a frame inside of a Telegram app, a frame inside of a Chrome extension, a frame inside of someone else's website. And that's kind of the vibe that I'm trying to go for this. And so I'll just play the video. And then, again, this is a real customer that we label data for in a distributed way. They're a fashion customer. This is a real customer, a real paying customer. So this is what data labeling looks like. And you can see it's kind of fun, it's kind of interactive. Compared to how the other guys do it currently, this is like night and day. I wish I showed you how the current model, it looks like Excel spreadsheets. It's like very tedious. We tried to make it fun. And so this customer is trying to use humans to predict fashion trends. So think of like Aritzia flash sales. And so this is what AI is doing now behind the scenes. They're helping businesses predict things better. We have another customer, they're an enterprise DeFi company. We're labeling Etherscan data for them to help them predict a pricing model. And you can see we're going very gamified. You can earn avatars, you can earn points, you can join labeling guilds, which are kind of like the Axie guilds as well, and label as a team together for a data set. And so yeah, that's Sapien, that little frame that you saw. And we want to do two things. We want to go cross-platform, and we want to go cross-chain. So what does that mean? It means we want to be on all the Web 2 platforms because we want to meet the labelers where they are. We want to be, like I said, on Telegram. We can shrink this frame into a Telegram game and meet our labelers that are on Telegram where they are. We want to go to the Chrome store. There's a great AI data company called Grass. You guys should check them out. They have 2 million installs. 2 million installs of a Web3 data Chrome extension. And we want to be there too. We're inspired by that. And we think that's where the users are going to come, not just to AI and Web3, but just Web3 in general. They're going to come via channels like this. And then we also want to be on our own website, the frame. We want to be on other people's website, like Animoca and YGG. We want to meet their labelers where they are. So that's part of our distribution strategy. And then on platform, and then cross-chain, we also want to meet them where they are. So if you're earning Sapien tokens, or let's just say you're earning points, you can actually redeem them on whatever chain you want. So you can earn them in Solana, you can earn them in Polygon in the EVM community. So we're trying to go cross-platform and cross-chain. No plans for a token or anything at the moment, but just as an example, we could stake another Ethereum or another EVM chain. Shout out to our new hire. We're very excited. Rowan from Base. He was actually the co-creator of Base, the L2. and he was partly leading the on-chain summer that they did for Base. So really excited about him. He's not here, unfortunately, but I just wanted to share with you our newest team member. Base now has probably 3 million users, I would guess. So he was the guy that helped architect all the growth there. We have some other names here. I won't read them all out, but at the very top row, Sasha from Parallel NFT. They're one of the top Web3 games by users. Bo and Yu standing over there. He was the one who helped refine this vision from the early days as a Web3 AI developer and founder. He's got a great project on his own as well. And then Gabby from YGG. I don't know if you guys know YGG. They're the biggest by far Web3 gaming guild. And we really like that. We like that for our labelers, and we're excited to integrate with them as well. Also, Kevin Zhang from SoftBank, angel invested, and Dovey Wan is from Primitive, and we're really excited about kind of going after the Asian market as well with them. Shout out, we've gone through 2 accelerators. Orange DAO, we love you guys. I think I see some of you. Really recommend that accelerator program. And now HF0 we're currently in. So we're just going through that right now. It's in San Francisco. It's unbelievable. We have a demo day coming up end of June. So I highly suggest you guys come check that out. And we have some new customers too. Like we have a public Chinese customer. They're like a $7 billion public company. And we're labeling, this is an interesting one. We're labeling their math GPTs. So they have 5 GPTs that they need data labeling for. Calculus, algebra, linear, whatever. So they need, and the reason they're doing that is because China, the government has banned private tutoring recently. So it's illegal to get a private tutor because it's some kind of ethos thing or something. And so all these education companies that do tutoring are screwed. And so their stock prices collapse. But then they said, hey, well, why don't we like innovate? Why don't we build these models that can be the new tutors for these kids? And they did. And so now the stock price is back up because they're replacing a lot of the human tutors with AI tutors, and they're building all these math GPT models. And so they're our biggest customer currently. And yeah, some of our investors, big shout out to Animoca, YGG, Blockchain Founders Fund, and everyone else on the list. We really appreciate you guys. And yeah, I'll pause for questions in a sec. This is kind of our overview. We just want to 100x the amount of human data labelers, and we want to make human data labeling fun, and we want to make it accessible to everyone. Before I do questions, we're very excited. We have our new art, our new branding. So I want to show you guys. No one's seen these yet, and this is the Sapien brand. Sapiens are anime creatures. That's you and I that are heroes. We're the AI heroes that are labeling data to make AI work. And so I'll just go through a few of these. Oh, there we go. And check out that link if you want more info. And I'm going to say thank you, and we can do some Q&A. So thank you. Thanks. I think they're going to pass the mic around. If there's any questions.
Hello. Hey, so what does the process look like when a company comes to you and says, we want Etherscan data labeling for price predictions?
So we're working towards a fully self-serve model. Currently, we're doing things very manually. So we're kind of like getting close to the customer. We're doing things that don't scale, as they say. A lot of times today, we have to build custom modules for each integration. So for example, the demos we showed you, we had to build a custom bounding box integration just for that customer. So there is a bit of kind of manual integrations, but what we're trying to do is like make that general purpose. And the more modules we build, the more efficient it is for the next customer that comes along. And so right now we're treated more like a traditional data labeling company, just to get users, get product market fit. We're just at about $1 million ARR currently as a company by servicing customers like that. And the next step is to decentralize it. I'm a big believer that you can't just decentralize a protocol right away. You have to do it in stages. You have to get product market fit, number one. If you don't get that, you got nothing. Then build a community, and then and only then you can kind of decentralize governance to them. So we're kind of following that path. To answer your question, right now we're servicing our customers manually, but as every month that goes by, we're trying to automate more and more to the point where it's just completely self-serve, like Uber. You don't have to think about it. You just click a button and everything works.
Hi, great talk. Couple questions for you. So how does screening work for labelers? And then could you talk about payouts and off-ramping?
So if you think about Uber, they have different levels. If you are an Uber X driver, you have a certain onboarding. If you're a Uber Black driver, you got to have the right car. You got to be a licensed limo driver. You got to wear gloves and a white suit. So that's kind of where we're moving towards as well. So it's still one app, and it's still servicing ride sharing as a marketplace, but you got to start somewhere. So right now we're starting with kind of the Uber X first. So just anyone that's a human can label data. This type of data is more accessible, so it's kind of like anyone can do it. And over time, we're already working with a pancreatic cancer researcher where we need a labeler who's a licensed radiologist to draw a bounding box around cancer cells and tumor cells to build that model. So we're kind of working our way up to more specialized data labeling. That's where the entire market is actually moving, is to more specialization. You're seeing comedians. You need comedians with that human skill to label comic data. You need movie poetry writers to do it and train the model to do what they're not good at. And so we're going to be building like different verticals within Sapien to serve those people. In terms of payouts, we're giving people the option. So you kind of earn points and you earn money as you label. And we have like a system where you earn points as you play, and then you have a multiplier coefficient based on how accurately you're playing. And then when it's time to cash out, it's literally points times multiplier coefficient based on how accurately you played equals your payout. And then you can choose fiat or crypto cash outs at the same time. So that's currently how it works. Thanks, Sam.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how you're validating accuracy and what the slashing criteria are?
That's the big one. So when we started, just to give some context, the top benchmark accuracy score for data labeling in Silicon Valley is about 90%. So if you're Tesla and you're hiring Scale AI or someone to label data, like 90% is like pretty good. And that's like the top decile. So that's what our goal is. We want to be more decentralized, better for the labeler, better for the customer, and also as accurate as them. And so we started out experimenting with different techniques. We started out doing mean reversion techniques. We built some algorithms and tested it. We did anomaly detection. That's another algorithm category. We also were building probabilistic models. So we'd give the same question to 1,000 labelers, and then we could kind of predict who's being accurate based on a distribution curve, like probabilistically. And so we were doing all that, and that got us to like 75, 80%. And I'm like, oh, okay, like we kind of hit a wall as well because we couldn't get higher, but it's like, oh, well, maybe we'll be the slightly less accurate but cheaper, product. But then we were like, hey, what if we started doing some Web3 experiments where people have to stake to play, or they have the option to stake, and we try to incentivize them to stake. So we give them more points, which translates into more cash if you're staking. But if we detect using those algorithms that I mentioned that you're cheating or you're not human, so a lot of things we're looking at are now is authenticating that you're really a human, because Sybil attacking means people are going to create bots to try to game the system. But anyways, as soon as we did staking and we had people actually buy a token and put it up to stake, 95%, like multiple standard deviations of improvement. And there was just something about human loss aversion or something, some cognitive bias. I don't know if you guys play poker, but they say, I don't know about you guys, I remember my big losses in poker. I forget the wins, but it's the losing I don't want to do. So we're still early and we're still fine tuning our own model. We're using ML linters actually, so we're using AI to build our own AI. But the end goal is to have like a really smart, like we're using mechanism design, like trying to like work backwards from the end goal of like high accuracy and just have a lot of incentives. And I think Web3 is really good for that. We also have other positive reinforcement stuff like, hey, you can win an airdrop from parallel NFT if you hit 10 labels in a row correctly. So a third party can get distribution on their NFT collection to our users, and then our users can have something fun they can win and maybe even sell to earn more per hour at the end of the day. So that's kind of what we're doing currently. Yeah. I think that might be all the time we got. So thanks, Ian.